I'm very excited today because one of my favorite events to attend is the Keban Awards. But this year, because of COVID and because of everything that happened, I wasn't able to attend. So instead, we're interviewing the two people that won. We have Cesar Alvarez and Isabelle Dawes. Cesar, what did you win for? And what shows are you looking to write?
Um, I won in the category of lyricist, and I, I've I've written five musicals, and they're all in various stages of development, and some of them have been produced in different kind of versions. As you know, musicals go on these long, long journeys of development.
10 years.
Um, yeah, 10 years if you're lucky. Some of them like wither on the vine, and you have to keep moving. But uh, right now, I'm really working on my musicals that are in development, and I do have a couple that are coming up. I have a commission at Playwrights Horizons and Denver Theater Center, and those are more just sort of I don't know what they're going to be yet, and I haven't totally figured those out. But most of my musicals are about um, interdimensional sorts of stories where one reality overlaps with another. I talk about non-humans a lot. I have aliens and ghosts and talking plants and robots, and also a lot of kind of mysticism and domesticity together. I would say in some of my work. So that's kind of my milieu.
Who inspires you as a lyricist?
Ooh, so many people, so many people. I mean, in the musical theater, um, obviously, I'm thinking about Sondheim and Kleban. Actually, is a huge inspiration. Um, Kander and Ebb's musicals are really, really important to me. Um, uh, Obviously, Lin Manuel is like in our world in a really big way, and but outside of me, I really came as a musician and as a songwriter. I came up outside of theater, and I only came to theater after grad school, and so I look a lot to um, Joni Mitchell and Lou Reed and Leonard Cohen. But also, I listen. I mean, Kendrick Lamar is one of my most favorite artists of all time. I listen to a lot of hip hop, also Latin music. Silvio Rodriguez is like really important to me. Andre 3000 taught me everything I need to know about rhyming. So I have a lot of really disparate inspirations.
Isabella, what did you win for?
I was given the prize in the librettist category. So, for musicals and operas, the libretto is basically the script. It's kind of the least poetic, most prosaic part of a musical, um, which it's very much akin to the skeleton. And then people like the work that Cesar does, or the work that my collaborator Titaya Sinutok, who is a composer, does, is kind of create the flesh and beating heart of the being that is the musical. Um, so I won for my work as a librettist. And right now I'm working on two musicals with Titaya Sinutok. The first is called Half the Sky, and it's about an Asian American woman climbing Mount Everest after her sister's death. And the second is called Sun Watcher, which takes its inspiration from a true story, the life of Japanese female astronomer Hisako Koyama, who lived during the 20th century. And her story is intertwined with the Japanese myth of the sun goddess Amaterasu. Um,
Wow.
so those are my two pieces that I'm working on right now.
Who inspired you to be a librettist?
Oh my gosh. Um, I was very lucky to grow up in Minneapolis, which has a big theater scene. So very early on, I was exposed to the process of creating a musical. And so I guess that's just to say that I take inspiration from just the experiences that I've had as an actor and performer of watching creative people, writers and directors work through the process of making a musical. It's very messy. It's not a clean thing to witness. But in terms of specific people, I do have to give a shout out to Candor and Ebb, because I think more than anyone else, other than maybe Rodgers and Hammerstein, of course, I grew up listening to and singing and performing a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein, but Candor and Ebb was like the next level for me as a young person. I listened to a lot of their work.
I love to hear you both talk about the classical writers of musical theater, because it seems like they're going away in a strange way. So it's nice to hear that that's who you admire. This question is for both of you, but we'll start with Cesar. What are you planning on doing with this money? Because this money is for 2 years, correct?
I mean, it's not exciting. Pay my bills. I just think the origination of this award, as I understand it, is Keban really understood that for the people that want to make musicals, write musicals, it's an incredibly long and arduous process, because it's not like if you're a designer, you can keep working on lots of different shows every year. If you're a director, you can do, and if you're writing a musical, you're working for years and years and years and years with the hope that it will one day be produced. And when it's produced, you still don't necessarily like have any kind of financial sustainability. It's just, I like to call musical theater writing an economically nonsensical activity. It basically makes no economic sense. And yes, a few people have like made a lot of money writing musicals, but for the most part, it's this cultural labor that is largely a labor of love. And so I've been for the last 20 years as a working artist, just kind of hopping from one gig to the next, trying to piece it together. And so the incredible weight lifted of having this gift is one of stability, of actually just like freeing up portions of my mind from worrying about economic instability for a little while, and then I'm going to fill it with art, I think.
Isabella.
Yeah, I completely agree with Cesar. We have, as artists, what we call survival jobs, which is, of course, separate from the actual art making, right? So, we're used to this kind of culture of juggling a bunch of different jobs and piecing everything together in order to feed what is creatively sustaining and soul fulfilling for us. So this, I think more than anything, like Cesar is saying, is just a chance for both of us to step back and reassess. We have a bit more freedom now in terms of how we are spending our time. And I think that's the biggest gift. And definitely, I mean, for myself, my first love is musical theater. We live in a time now where, I think as writers, as dramatic writers, there are different options and different mediums that we can explore, which are really exciting. Television, film, writing for Zoom or writing for the internet, writing for video games. It's an exciting time in terms of technology and different media, but I love musical theater. And so I'm drawn to it despite the economical nonsense of it. So this is definitely a big encouragement.
If anyone could take away from your work something about you, what would that be? Cesar?
I think that a lot of the reason I make musicals is because I feel like music is the conversation with the invisible world. Um, Songs to me are like magic spells. They're made up of words and sounds, but then when you put them together and you perform them in just the right way, something else happens, something otherwise or alternate dimensional to the actual ingredients. And so for me, it's about transformation, and it's about encountering the unknown and the strange. And when we do that, we become more empathetic, more imaginative, more possibilities open up. And to me, art is the absolute fundamental way that human beings transform and progress and build possibility for future. So what I hope is when people see my work, they have thoughts and ideas and feelings that they didn't know they had or they had never had before. I write musicals for people to laugh and to cry and to think. I've found musicals to be so fun because they're the most giant kind of collaboration that I can ever wrap my head around. And also, they're one of the things that cause people to listen to songs the most deeply. I played for years and years in clubs and bars and coffee shops and living rooms and empty warehouses, and I loved the vibes of that, but people didn't really listen to the music. And I would write, just labor over these songs, and I really wanted people to hear them. And I was like, well, if I put it in a story, people are really going to listen to the lyrics and they're going to think about it and they're going to try to understand how it, and that's what I want people to do with my music. And so sometimes I say I write musicals to convince people to listen to my songs. But I really just think sitting in a group of people performing and listening to music and theater and performance and text it's just this ancient human practice that is absolutely imperative to our survival and coexistence.
Isabella.
Yeah, I love what Cesar is saying. I mean, we're drawn to, trying to create that experience in a room, right? The special thing about theater and musical theater is that it only happens once. Each experience is unique, and it only involves that specific group of people and that one moment in time that everybody shares together, or a moment, or hopefully a collection of moments over the course of maybe a couple hours. But I am interested in using musical theater to explore community, the idea of relationships, of your duties and fidelities and challenges in relating to other people. I find that important for me as an individual to investigate, but I want audience members to take that away too. Who are the people we're living alongside, who we have familial bonds with, friendships with, romantic relationships with, who are our neighbors, who are the people who live in our nation and our world, our hemisphere, and how do we relate to these people? What do we owe them? What do we have the right to reserve for ourselves? I'm very drawn to this idea of the individual versus the community, how to balance those ideas. And especially family is a big part of that for me. And my stories deal a lot with familial bonds. And the second thing I would say, which relates to all of that too, is I'm very interested in bringing nature on stage. I think it's really important to, if I have a platform, to be able to remind people of their relationship to the natural world and to the planet, and to think about the planet as something that changes and is not static, and to think about their effect on that environment as well. So those are kind of, I guess, two main points or values that I try to impart in my work.
And my last question, where can we find your work right now? Cesar.
One of my pandemic projects was I built a website, and on my website, what I tried to do is create an archive a living archive of my work, and so for each one of my musicals, I've kind of collected photographs and press clippings, and also I really tried to go back into all these old emails and programs and try to list all of the artists that have worked on these musicals. And so for the ones, for my musical Futurity, which I started in 2008, so that's 14 years ago.
Was that done downtown?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I saw that.
Oh, cool. I was in it. For that one, hundreds of people, maybe at least more than 100 people have worked on it, and so I'm trying to create these archives where all the people that worked on the piece over the many iterations of it. By the time it got off Broadway, we had done it 55 times in clubs and bars,
wow,
and museums, and all of those versions of the piece were the piece. So I'm trying to create a living archive of the work, and you can go and experience a bunch of different ways into the piece. And then in addition to that, I'm trying to develop my work in workshops and in public and in concerts. And it's been tricky during the pandemic. I also am a parent, so it's been like I've been just hiding for 2 years. But I'm really hopeful that in the next year, in the next couple years, I'm gonna have concerts, workshops, and hopefully a full production or two. So,
what happened to Futurity?
What happened to it? It closed off Broadway. It was doing great. It won some awards.
Like great reviews.
Yeah, somebody else had to book the space, so we had to leave. And then, but right now, actually, they're in rehearsal for a workshop of it at Wesleyan, and we're like transcribing the orchestrations, and it's going to be licensable. So we're really excited for high schools and colleges and community theaters to do it, which has always been a dream of mine. I think to see a work have its own life. It also did get done once in Rhode Island, and there was a high school production in Massachusetts. So my hope is to give this to the world, and let's see what like 19-year-olds and 12-year-olds want to do with it. I'm really excited for that.
And Isabella, where can we see any of your work?
You can go to my website, www.isabelladawes.com. And you can also go to www.halftheskymusical.com to hear more music from that show.
I wish you all the best in both of your careers, and congratulations. This is a big deal, and I look forward to see where you bring musical theater.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Isabella.
Congrats!
Yay. And this is the first time we've seen each other?
We've never met.
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to be the one to bring you together.
We're gonna hang out.
That's actually thrilling.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.